Good morning. My name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee. I would like to start this work session with a moment of silence for all the innocent victims in Israel. The terrorist attack that is going on right now is horrific, and my heart goes out with all the victims that have been harmed at this moment. Thank you. Well, today we're going to start the agenda with a discussion with the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation on the business retention. This is the second part of a series of work sessions that we're going to have. The first one was a few weeks ago on attraction, and today we're going to be focused on retention. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Ms. Marlene Markinson to start us off.
Yes, thank you. Just as a reminder, the committee, as you went through budget, started discussion about business and attraction and retention, and felt like it really needed a lengthier, in-depth dive, and you scheduled it at 2 different work sessions to really give each the attention that they deserved. So with that, I'll turn it over to MCEDC, who's going to take you through their strategies.
Good morning, council members, and thank you for having us this morning. I am Laurie Babb. I'm a Director of Economic Development on the Business Development team at MCEDC, and I'm going to provide you with an overview of our business retention program efforts this morning. Our goal at MCEDC is to retain companies in our strategic industries and to help them grow here. And just a reminder, as you had mentioned, my colleague was here a few weeks ago and highlighted our target industries, and those are life sciences, technology, nonprofit headquarters, hospitality, and real estate. And we also do focus on woman-owned and minority-owned and other underserved businesses within those industries. We estimate that there are, roughly 33,000 businesses in the county. Of those, about 5,000 fall into our target industries, and the other 27,000 businesses would be those that would be served by the Montgomery County Business Center or other partners throughout the county. Our data from fiscal year 23 highlights the projects that MCEDC worked on for companies to either create or retain jobs here in the county. As you can see, the red part of the pie chart is the overwhelming majority of new jobs created come from retention projects. It is definitely much easier to keep existing businesses here and have them create jobs here than it is to attract new ones. And we'll get into some more details on those numbers later in the presentation. When we think about our business retention engagement strategy, the first question is, who are we targeting? Again, the companies that fall into our target industries are our focus. We also look at companies who will have a lease that would be expiring. For example, we utilize CoStar, the largest commercial real estate database in the U.S., to search for companies with upcoming lease expirations and then reach out to them directly. Also, if a company has recently acquired new funding, if they were just awarded seed funding or completed a Series A venture capital round, that would be something that would trigger us to reach out to them. Also, if a company had been involved in a merger or an acquisition, either they acquired another firm or someone acquired them, we would contact the company to check in with them. Some of those actions are what we refer to in economic development as a red flag, indicating that something could be happening, changing, moving with the company. Similarly, if a company announces that they're adding a lot of jobs or they're going to do a layoff, we would connect with them. Anytime layoffs are announced, if there's a WARN notice, for instance, we work with WorkSource Montgomery to reach out to the company and potentially provide names of other companies who may be looking to fill similar positions and doing everything we can to assist. And then finally, companies that are new to the market. They just recently opened up shop in the county. We reach out to them to introduce ourselves and offer to be of assistance to them in any way possible if needed by them. So how do we actually engage in business retention activities? First is direct company outreach to the companies themselves. We could pick up the phone and make a phone call with them. We may email to check in. We often do scheduled or unscheduled business visits to learn about them, get tours of their facilities. We also interact with a lot of our existing companies at conferences or trainings. And finally, as you know, there are a lot of organizations that offer awards for specific companies, young CEOs, young entrepreneurs, things like that. So we often submit our local companies' names for those awards to try to engage them in that way. The second type of activity we do for business retention is C-suite engagement, making sure that we know the CEOs, the COOs, the CFOs in our target industries and staying engaged with them through phone calls, through regular emails. Our president CEO, Bill Tompkins, has been hosting some targeted roundtable lunches with small groups of C-level representatives to engage with them and get their insights and feedback. And certainly we utilize the C-suite executives on the MCEDC board and other executives in the county to help support our retention efforts. The third way we execute our business retention plan is through networking events. MCEDC either hosts or sponsors events every quarter with staff in attendance and interacting with the companies that are there. We also attend a number of partner events throughout the year, chamber events, Maryland Tech Council, other trade associations, things like that. And we, of course, attend award events that recognize those local companies and provide them as much publicity about that as we can. As you probably know, one of the things that we hear regularly from companies is that they need access to capital. Part of our retention efforts include making referrals to local banks with direct contacts that we have made there, referrals to CDFIs or community development financing institutions, which are lending institutions that can take more risks than traditional banks and often serve startups or underserved populations. LEDC and Life Asset are examples of CDFIs that we have here in the region. And those CDFIs also provide technical support, technical assistance to these companies too. So they're a little more hands-on than traditional banks are. And of course, we also refer our companies to federal, state, and local funding sources that may be appropriate for their businesses. So recommending SBA loans, helping to refer them to different programs that either the Maryland Department of Commerce or Department of Housing and Community Development may have to help them get the funding that they need. And of course, all the local support that's available as well. Building on that need for capital, as you may know, in 2022, MCEDC was named a fund manager for the state of Maryland's Video Lottery Terminal Fund program. We are the 9th fund manager in the state. That is a program that is actually funded through revenues that come in through the slot machines and the casinos around the state of Maryland. And this is definitely a way for us to get more capital to some of those small local businesses who need it. The funds are directly targeted to small woman-owned and minority-owned businesses. Prior to us becoming a fund manager, there were very few Montgomery County-based businesses who actually were ever awarded VLT funding in the state. So we're very excited to offer this as a funding opportunity to our local businesses. Just some stats on that fund. We did name our fund the Accelerating Community Excellence Fund, or ACE loan fund in the county. In FY23, and this is actually an abbreviated fiscal year, we didn't launch our program until the end of September of last year, so it wasn't quite a full fiscal year. But in FY23, we had 25 loans approved. Of those, 14 were Montgomery County-based businesses, so we were very excited about that. Almost $1.4 million loaned through those loans. Our average loan size was almost $55,000 with an average interest rate of 8% and a loan repayment term of 54 months. We do receive applications from a wide range of industry types for that program: construction firms, consulting firms, retail, restaurant, but we also get technology firms, medical, dental practices, physical therapists. So it is definitely a wide range of companies who are benefiting from that program. We also have a lot of partners that we work with to support our existing businesses, service providers such as attorneys and accountants that we can refer companies to who need that support, chambers of commerce who provide workshops, trainings, and networking opportunities for our local companies. We also build our relationships with utility providers such as Pepco and WSSC in case we have businesses who need assistance in those areas. And of course, our close working relationships with the Maryland Department of Commerce, Montgomery County government, a multitude of departments such as the Montgomery County Business Center and permitting, in addition to many other departments here in the county, and our local partners at Rockville Economic Development and Gaithersburg Economic Development. Finally, at MCEDC, we also provide marketing support for our local companies. Ad campaigns such as our Be Next campaign feature local companies. Our weekly newsletter contains highlights of business successes and social media posts and retweets, of course. Our new podcast, Something to Talk About, will feature local companies. And we can also provide connections to regional media outlets for our companies. If they have their own PR departments and are looking to spread the word, we make those connections for them as well.
Hi, I'm Brad Stewart with Montgomery County Economic Development. So Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez asked me at the last meeting to provide some more data, and I will do so. Thank you for the request. At the start of this, Lori mentioned this is the number of jobs that we worked on last year, FY23 at MCDC. The total for the end of the year was 6,787 jobs, either retained or brought to the county. And as she mentioned, a significant number of these are retention projects, keeping businesses that are already here. We talked last session about attraction, which is a very long-term effort, and Preyas is working on that, and that's something that in 18 months, 2 years, we'll start to see, I hope, increase. The interesting thing about retention, I'll show you on the next slide, is these aren't simple, clear-cut buckets. It's very common. We have a company that not only do we retain here in Montgomery County, they're expanding. And one of the reasons that there may be a risk of them leaving is they're looking to add more jobs and need more space. Sometimes we do lose those because there are times when we have people looking for specific types of space in Montgomery County that's uncommon. We don't have a lot of light industrial space here. We don't have a lot of industrial space here. So sometimes those type of companies just outgrow what we have in Montgomery County. So if we go back and I actually pulled this together from all of our data from the previous year. This is every retention project we worked on last year in FY23. Everyone that concluded, we worked on a significant number more than this because many of our projects take 12, 18 months. These are ones that are actually closed last year. I pulled all this together and then grouped them by industry to give you a sense of the number of projects, where they come from, and the size, the capital investment employees. It's interesting if you look at the top four, life sciences, corporate headquarters, technology, and hospitality. These also align very closely with our target industries the county council designated for us when MCEDC was created. You can see that those businesses disproportionately provide the new capital that gets invested in the county, the number of jobs, and the amount of square footage that gets occupied in the county. So I think this group was very forward-thinking when they made that decision several years ago. And that's not due to the fact that we don't pay attention to other industries, because you can see we have probably just as many projects in industries that aren't within those strategic industries, because as we in the Montgomery County Business Center say, there's no wrong door to walk into Montgomery County. We will help you. But you can see that we've worked on nonprofit, retail, consulting, instruction, a variety of different projects there. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm happy to answer any questions about that now, or I think we have another slide or two.
After you guys are done,
Sure.
we'll do Q&A. Thank you.
Yep, just one last slide to wrap up. So one of the questions that have been asked at the last session also is, what are the tools that you need in order to do your work better? And the tools that are helpful to us in our business retention efforts making sure that we have the appropriate properties and buildings so that businesses can expand their businesses here, can grow their space. Having a competitive business climate and tax climate, so it makes sense for companies to continue to do business here. Having the available infrastructure, including roads, transit, broadband, energy, all of those things, so that the companies that we have here can stay here and continue to thrive here. Having regulatory consistency and efficiency, so that companies know how long it's going to take them to get a required permit for their expansion. If they need to add a wall or they're adding a bathroom or things like that, knowing how long that process is going to take. Incentives, if they may leave, if we're in a situation where a company may leave the county, we're now competing against attraction incentives, which are often more generous because that jurisdiction is going to receive net new jobs in their jurisdiction. So making sure that we have incentive programs that make our offer beneficial to the company. And then having the available workforce and workforce training support programs to build the pipeline of the workforce for the future and upskilling our current workers to remain competitive in the marketplace here in Montgomery County.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm sure we all have questions. I have a few questions. So I'm going to kick it off and then followed by Councilmember Lori Sells. So the first question is, how soon do you reach out to those companies whose leases are expiring?
So there's not a single answer to that, but as soon as we determine that a lease is going to expire, generally, if we think it's going to expire within the next 12 to 18 months, if we get that information, that's when we're reaching out to them.
Okay. And so let's say that you have a company that's about to, the lease is about to expire, let's say 12 months, as you mentioned. Do you feel that so far you have enough incentives or tools to ensure that they stay? Or what challenges have you seen in the last year, especially for those companies who actually left? Any examples that you can give of things that we're not doing okay? That's what I need to hear.
Well, as Brad mentioned, part of it is I know we have lost a couple of light industrial, light manufacturing firms because we don't have a lot of that type of space.
But
here
we
in the
do
county.
have some. But what happened in specific? Because that's very general for me. We do have light industry. We don't have that many, but we do have some.
Oh no, we have those companies. It's the square footage of space available. So if a company is currently in 20,000 square feet and they are consolidating from another location, with another location, and they now need 50,000 square feet, I don't have 50,000 square feet of light industrial space to offer that.
I need the specifics, so
Right.
that way, because when we go to the PHP committee sessions and we're talking about light industry zone,
Right.
the last light industry zone that I worked on when I was on the planning board was actually on I think it was the White Flint 2 master plan, because we do have some there, as well as I think the Montgomery Hills had a little bit, and that's it. But we have other areas in the county that we should be looking at. If that's an issue, a challenge that you continue to see, we need to have those specific numbers so we can dig into that. I mean, the attitude shouldn't be, well, they left because we don't have enough. The attitude should be, this is a problem, how can we face it and solve it? So if you can get back to the committee and perhaps even share that info with the PHP committee on specific cases, so we know what we're facing right now.
Why don't we use two examples, one small, one large. You take a small firm in Rockville that just moved to Frederick. There was space available, but the owner and probably 70% of the workforce lived in Frederick. And for them, it was a question.
So the issue wasn't the light industry. The issue was the workforce doesn't live here. They live up county.
They didn't live
so
here.
that's actually
Yeah.
the real issue.
Yeah.
It wasn't the light industry.
Right. And
So-
it would have cost, they could get brand new space in Frederick because it was available, because it was built there. And we toured, or at least I did, the area where they were located, and it's pretty run down. It really needs the landlords to really invest in improving the quality of the properties. The other example that I think about is very large, and that's like Kite, which was several years ago.
So I'll go back to Councilmember
Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. Bill Tompkins, President and CEO of Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation.
Yeah, so the example Bill gave is a good one because it does point to a challenge I think the entire council should think about, and that is we have a lot of employees that work in Montgomery County that live in Frederick and other counties because they can't afford to live here, right? And in particularly when you're talking about businesses which are light industrial manufacturing, which typically are lower paying, that's a real risk I think that we face. And the example Lori was giving before, that wasn't the example. This was a much more sophisticated manufacturer who two things happened at the same time. One, they were growing. They were a company that had locations around the country. They had acquired another company and were looking to grow their facilities here. There wasn't anything large enough for them here for what they were doing. Unfortunately, the building that they were in was being converted, not unfortunately in general, was being converted or used entirely for life sciences. And so the landlord, that wasn't the most beneficial use for that building to the landlord. So we do run into challenges like that where every landlord decides what's in the best interest for them and what to do with their building and how much to invest in it. So it does create a bit of a challenge from that perspective. There's not always a good match for the business's needs and the facilities.
Do you keep track of all those cases? Like, is there a document that you can share with us and say, you know, the past 2-3 years, these are the companies that left due to these particular issues? I mean, it's great that you're mentioning these examples because it gives us insight on what's happening in Montgomery County. And I love the fact that you talked about the workforce. It's very expensive to live here, especially for those who are making $60,000, $70,000 a year, and much less too. So it is an issue, and it's a business issue, it's a workforce issue, which leads to the training programs that I would love for you to touch more about that. I know you have a relationship with Montgomery College, with our different educational institutions here, but how closely do you work with what you're seeing right now with the workforce and the trainings that people need to have in order for them to stay and perhaps make more money on that industry, and how do you communicate that information to the colleges, to the University of Maryland, to all the institutions that we have nearby? How is that relationship?
It varies by institution. So, for instance, we work, let's take USG as an example, where we're meeting with them on a regular basis. I'm going to back up for a second. We have someone on our staff who is part-time dedicated to working with the school systems in terms of workforce needs and WorkSource Montgomery to look at short-term needs, more immediate needs. But I would say in terms of retention, the bigger issue is when people are moving out of the county is housing. And it's not necessarily the training in the short term. It is housing costs, which we're very aware of, and that's sort of hard to counter. The other firm, one example, and we don't keep a database that is separate for business losses. We just look at each one to see if there's a pattern. Many of you are familiar with the consulting firm BCG, Boston Consulting Group, which I think it's this year will be moving into the District of Columbia. That was announced. We knew about that 3 years ago. That is not, it's not a housing issue, and it's really about the fact that their staff is getting younger, and it's about lifestyle. So they chose to be closer to where they perceive the action to be. The reason they were here the first time around was that their partners, when they opened the office outside of New York, all lived in Montgomery County in Bethesda, and so we were fortunate to have them here for about 15 years. But when their lease expired, it wasn't that they weren't interested in staying here, but they took a poll of their staff. And as they get younger, the overwhelming majority wanted to be where they thought things are happening in one of the newer office buildings in downtown DC, I think right off of Massachusetts Avenue or somewhere down there. So each one varies quite a bit. If there were a trend where we could say it's not enough light manufacturing space, or housing is clearly a trend, but something that in the short term we think we can address. It's not about incentives. We can always address incentives. And I think we feel comfortable that if an incentive will make a difference, then we've not, in my opinion, had a problem providing an incentive relative to the task.
That younger workforce that you're talking about, just wait until they have babies. They'll come back.
We actually, when you look at companies that are moving in here, you can almost see the pattern, and this part is anecdotal, that you got 2 kids, and that's why the school system is so important. Even with the housing affordability, when you package it all together, even though we have more private schools than any other jurisdiction, the public school system continues to be a huge draw in spite of the challenges. And we push that very hard. You know, they turn 30, 32, have 2 kids. Montgomery County is a very attractive place for people to relocate.
Thank you for that. I'm going to pass it to Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Marlene, for the packet, and thank you, Bill and Brad and Lori for the presentation. Given the shift and evolution of our post-pandemic workforce and the effects on our business owners and the economy, I'm really glad that we're able to discuss this. And since I've been attending events all over the county, from the event that we hosted last week with the Secretary of Commerce, our ribbon cuttings, I'm talking with business owners about the challenges our businesses are facing and the successes that they encounter. A recurring theme that businesses share as a success are the incentives, so I'm glad that we covered those in the presentation today. But my first question is about these roundtables you're hosting. What are you learning from the roundtables? How many are you holding? What's the focus or goal of these discussions, and how is it enhancing or influencing your work?
Sure. So the specific roundtable that Lori referred to are monthly lunch meetings that I have with 8 to 10 business people and a member of our board of directors and a member of our staff to get off-the-record input into what their pressing issues are relative to being successful in Montgomery County. And the reason I say off the record is I don't want them to sugarcoat anything. I don't want them to feel that they're testifying, which is why we don't release their names. But I then report back to the board, or if it's something that should come before a council member where there's a specific issue, then we'll talk about that. The issue that comes up most consistently, there are 2. One, on the positive side, people are not abandoning Montgomery County. We talk about the negative, but they're here for many good reasons, and they want to reinforce that fact that they choose to be here, they choose to stay here, even when there are odds. The number one challenge is certainty around the permitting process, the planning and permitting process, that for those who happen to be expanding their business, or if they're developers, that is something that we've talked about before, and they do compare us to other jurisdictions. That even if it takes time, it takes us longer here, and things change more frequently than they do in other jurisdictions. And in many settings, we've talked about what should happen here to reduce or to improve the confidence around certainty in terms of not only how long it takes to get something done, but the process in which it's carried out. The second issue that comes up, which is not unique to Montgomery County, is available talent. There's a shortage of talent across the region, and Montgomery County is no different. I would say that the thing that we want to watch in terms of the red flags are that, and this comes up as more legislation is passed that is perceived to be less business friendly. When a business does have the opportunity to expand, they look at other jurisdictions, and it's not necessarily just in the DMV, it could be across the country, areas where they think they'll get a better return on their investment with, quote, less hassle.
Okay.
We don't just do those, that's just one example of the meetings we have. We have tons and tons of meetings. We took advantage of having businesses last week, some of whom joined us at the Crossvines where you were, where several of you were. 1, 2, 3 of you were there. Hope you had a good time.
Very nice. I'm just wondering, because permitting continues to be a recurring issue and challenge. I know we have a new director. I'm wondering how these concerns are being communicated and resolved, and
So
how
I'm
we're
going to.
working together.
Sure. We work very closely together. For those of you who were at our last board meeting, a gentleman who is sitting behind me, whom I swore we would not ask to come up, and we're not going to ask him to, Jake Weissman, has worked very closely in terms of the feedback that is being received across the board to improve the permitting process. And we meet very regularly with members of permitting, both at the senior level and with the working staff whenever there is an issue. Just like you, we are tracking the commission that just finished their report on recommendations to improve the process.
Oh,
But
okay.
we are engaged with them every day.
Oh, good. I'm sure we'll have another meeting with them. One other question. Regarding the pie chart that was on the presentation. Yeah. I can pull up the jobs one. So 13 on the slide 13. Yeah. Oh, okay. Can you just share a bit more about how we attracted the 6.7% of businesses and expanded the 16.6%? What industries did we attract workers to, and did they come from within the county or outside of the county? Yeah, I think this is okay.
Sorry, rookie mistake. So even though from the previous slide, there's 5,207 jobs, which are retention. If you look at the fourth column there, you'll see it adds to 5,207 jobs. To the right of that, though, you'll see there's 1,282 jobs. So as I mentioned earlier on, our retention projects very frequently involve both expansion of companies into Montgomery County. I can talk about two very large ones in the life sciences industry. Where one was to keep 600 jobs here in Montgomery County because they were consolidating a number of different facilities and expanding them. And they also added another 400 jobs on top of that. So it's fairly common that our retention projects come along at the same time that people are thinking about, how do I build a larger place or hire more employees, and is this the right place to do it?
And did we incentivize that retention, or?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a very big project. It's about 1,000 jobs. We had another similar project like that in the life sciences. One of the ones that Lori worked on for corporate headquarters, the second one that's on there, again, another project where a large national company had their headquarters here in Montgomery County. They were looking to expand and also looking at other jurisdictions that were maybe more friendly and tax friendly towards their business. Lori worked very hard to convince them to stay here. And again, they added another almost 200 employees in that. So retention and expansion frequently come together, not always, but you can see from these numbers that other than that one in hospitality, they did almost every time. Attraction is a little bit more difficult. Obviously, as we talked about last time, there are some very unusual cases, but not rare, where an attraction also is an expansion. And that may be where we have you asked a question earlier about some of our businesses. We have to realize that we're competing across the globe, not just in the DMV. So we have many businesses here who have facilities around the world, not just around the country. And so they make decisions on where to locate new business units or to expand new business units. So occasionally we'll have an attraction project where the company may already be here in a small amount, but is looking nationally or globally to where to put a new business unit. So we had one of those projects happen recently where out of sites all around the world, the company chose to headquarter that new business unit here in Montgomery County. So it's a lot of these things intersect together with each other.
So is that what accounts for the 6.7? One business?
No,
Okay.
I don't have that chart with me today. I had it at our board meeting last week.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we can get more information about.
But there's also a pipeline. We're working on a company right now who's headquartered in Baltimore, and they're getting more and more contracts in Montgomery County. So we're talking to them about, well, why are you doing all this in Baltimore? And so we're looking at locations in, of all things, both opportunity zones and hub zones that fit their profile. And that's a question of a matter of time, that when they hit the right number in terms of the balance of contracts here, we are very confident that all of their expansion will be here, which will create additional jobs. Now, that's in the pipeline. That's not showing up here, but this is ongoing.
Okay. Thank you.
Before I pass it to Councilmember Balkin, I'll mention that I have been doing a tour with the director of DPS on the challenges that businesses are having when getting a permit. It has been pretty eye-opening, not just for me, but also for the new director. He's coming back in December, and on the same day we're having the DPS update, because it came a few months ago when he started, to give us an update of all the changes, especially cultural changes he needs to do within his department. As we mentioned last time he was in front of this committee, we need to have a yes culture in DPS. It's not about saying, oh, you have a problem, I got you. No, it's about saying, you have a problem, how can I help you to fix it? He's also going to come, DPS is also going to join us to talk about permitting within the restaurant sector. And that session is going to be, we're also going to have HHS, just because they are the ones who keep permits in terms of food for restaurants. And that will be a very interesting session in December, so stay tuned. With that, Councilmember Balkin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. And I appreciate how we're building on, we talked about attraction. We had all the attraction numbers last time, so I appreciate that. And it's key that retention and expansion is really the bulk of the jobs. And it's easier to keep a business that we already have and help them expand. And so I'm glad we're having this conversation. So one of the things that we've known is that we don't know all the businesses. We don't have a list of all the businesses. Can you just talk a little bit about how you become aware that businesses are moving in? I know for large businesses, I hope you're involved from the very beginning, but we have so many different brokers, so many different buildings, so many commercial endeavors. How do you keep track of the totality of businesses in the community?
That's a great question, and I wish we had the answer for that. Part of how we do that and how we find out is our relationships with the real estate brokers and the developers in the area. That we want to fill their buildings as much as they want to fill their buildings, so we have a great working relationship with them in trying to attract those companies to come in. Because of the relationships we have with the broker community, sometimes they do reach out to us and say, hey, you know, XYZ company has signed a lease, they're going to be moving in 6 months. They have some questions, can you guys sit down and answer questions for them? Things like that. So we do have that type of relationship. Mm-hmm. We also track things like PitchBook and Moody's and things like that, where they're triggering, you know, we'll get notices that the company has been acquired, or they got funding, or they're moving locations. So those resources as well. And honestly, it's about us, you know, the relationships that we have when we're out and about and talking with people, and they say, hey, I just drove by and saw some new company has put their name up. We were contacted earlier this year by a company who moved into Silver Spring. They had already decided what location they wanted, and then they reached out to us because they have a relationship with their economic development agency in where they're currently located. So they reached out to us proactively and said, we're moving in, you know, we'd love to sit down and talk with you guys and see how we can build a relationship with you as well. So it depends.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys want
We created not for the first time, but in a more formal fashion, our list of top 125 companies that, regardless of whether they're in this group or not that we have long-term relationships with. And it's not just to work with those companies, but because they also become our eyes and ears, that they quite often will tell us, there's a company down the street that is thinking about X. And to the degree that we know the industries inside and out, and which trade shows or professional organizations to be engaged with where the chatter takes place, and it could be as simple as the Board of Trade, which we're very active in, to understand what's the pulse of the region in terms of who's doing what, who's moving. So there are lots of different ways in which we track what's happening here or could be happening here.
And thank you. And I know the frustration of trying to get a handle on that. So how do you take care, the care and feeding of a mid-sized company? Not all of them are going to succeed, and some of them are going to expand. So what's your strategy for making sure that they're aware of the resources available for expansion?
Well, again, it comes from knowing them, building those relationships, and making sure they're comfortable to reach out to us when they have those questions and concerns. And a lot of that gets back to some of the things I was saying. When they're a small and growing company, if we nominate them for an award, all of a sudden we're great friends with that company. You know, they've gotten that recognition, and we have those regular conversations. So it depends on the industry, and I think it depends on the needs of the companies, but part of what we try to do is self-promotion of our agency and our services that we provide, so that people say, oh, I did see something. There is somebody in the county who can help me with site selection, you know, if I'm looking for a different space or things like that. So it's a lot of that, trying to do that regular outreach and self-promotion of MCEDC.
Yeah, I would say it's probably more promotion about the county than it is self-promotion. For instance, we have dramatically expanded what we do with our newsletters, our social media, and it's always about what's here in Montgomery County. We will talk about specific services, specific programs. You see more and more in our overall marketing and public relations us referring to letting companies tell the story, and we've talked about that before. So that the companies are telling the story about why they are doing well here, why they're being successful here. The podcast that's being that was just introduced, something to talk about. It's something to talk about in Montgomery County. And if you look at traditional marketing, if you look at direct outreach, if you look at social media, the idea is that over time, from multiple sources, mid-sized companies hear or are familiar with resources that are available, or they get the idea that something must be available. I can't put my finger on it, but I know something is available because I'm hearing about these other things. And that's why the importance of effective and ongoing marketing from the broader sense is so important, because there are many, many programs. You will hear us promoting very regularly, not just what we do, but for instance, the Montgomery County Business Center, because a lot of small and medium-sized businesses are going there. You know, you take that group of 33,000 businesses, we've got to make sure that they are also covered. So as best we can, it's not just our direct efforts, but the efforts that we use both with partners and marketing.
Yeah, and I think I think that's the key of the people who know about MCDC and the Business Center. They have access to the resources. The concern for me is always, what about the people who don't, and particularly immigrant, minority-owned businesses who aren't following MCEDC on Twitter and those kinds of things. So I think that we just need to continue to make sure that the message is being spread clearly.
Let me just give you two examples to those target audiences. We just 2 Sundays ago were involved with Latinas USA, 400 mostly women-owned businesses. The council committee chair can talk to that even more. She was there. But we not only sponsor that, we had some health issues that we couldn't participate the way in which we did the previous year, where we are there working that audience. Another group that you all are very familiar with, the Black Collective. We try not to duplicate what they do, but to take all of the things that they are doing and to make sure that we can show up and expand, and we look at the list of businesses they've been exposed to so that we are there, not spreading the word, but making sure that we understand what their specific needs are. And we can go down, we keep a list of every event we go to and what the activity is, whether it's a networking event, it could be a cocktail party, it could be a training session, and that we actually put in our annual report and our semi-quarterly reports actually to the county executive.
Okay, great, thank you. And then just from a workforce development perspective, and we'll get this information in the next panel, but the migration to Frederick is a big issue. And so I think, of course, housing is the primary reason why many people move further on up. But now that I have my colleagues, my T&E colleagues right next to me, but transportation is an issue too. I mean, if people continue to move further out, we can't just throw up our hands. We have to look at transportation options too. So I just wanted to make that plug while I had my T&E folks here. So thank you.
And since you mentioned the business center, I just want to share a very positive story. I had a business in Wheaton that they called me up telling me that they had some issues with parking. Long story short, I contacted the business center with Nadia, and I told her this particular business cannot leave Wheaton. It will not happen. So she took the marching orders, and long story short, she solved the issue. They're going to stay, and I'm very happy, so I have to say that. With that happy story, I'm going to pass it on to Council Vice President Andrew Fritzen. And thank you for being in the committee today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for putting this together. Thank you for the presentation, and appreciate the questions and thoughtful dialogue from colleagues and the helpful back and forth. First of all, the ACE loan program, I'm really glad you brought that up. I talk about it all the time. This was an example of engagement that happened during the pandemic, and we were talking to businesses. I was participating in several of the business work groups, and this was an identified concern that businesses had, and so we got to work. And I work with the executive branch, and we worked with our state partners, and with some public and private efforts, we're able to free this up and make this happen. So it's really exciting to see it, but I think it, more importantly than just talking about this particular program, it speaks to the power of engagement with the business community, and it speaks specifically to what Councilmember Balcom, who knows a thing or two about reaching out to businesses, the critical nature of knowing who the community of businesses are, so that we're talking to them and engaging them, because here we're taking credit for this great program, which we should be, but really it's the businesses who raised this concern, who pushed us to do this, and with the partnership with MCEDC and the executive branch and my office, we're able to work together with the state to make it happen. So I just wanted to note that. I think it really is a good encapsulation of why this work is so important. I also appreciate the acknowledging of the Montgomery County Economic Development Strategic Plan, and that you're following it, that the key sectors that were identified are largely the sectors that you have been focused on, which I think is really helpful. And I think some of it is the council being forward looking. I think some of it is that we just finally got on the same page, where everybody agreed that we were going to have one plan. If you have 7 plans, you don't have a plan. You have 7 different ideas, and it's not really working. So it's good to see that we're finally in a place where the executive branch and the council and MCEDC and all of our other relevant partners really understand what it is that we're buying into. So that's really exciting to see. I'm really appreciative that the previous council moved that forward, and that you're executing it. But related to that are the metrics. So my question is, how do I don't know what to think of the retention projects. Is this good? Is this less than good? Is this terrific? I'm not really sure, because I don't really know what the goals were, or how they fall. So could you talk a little bit about that? Like, did you have a target number of life sciences businesses or a certain number of capital invested that you are looking to do? Has the board weighed in on that? Could you just speak a little bit to that aspect?
So thank you, Councilmember Friedson. Pleasure to see you again. And the answer is this was spectacular. So the goal for our organization in FY23 was 1,500 jobs, and we ended the year at 6,787. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that we're not going to do that in FY24, and I'll tell you why. A lot of these projects are very hard to predict how long they take to close. Some of these may take 6 months, some of these may take 2 years or longer. So in FY23, we had several very large projects that we worked on. One that was 2,700 jobs alone. So these are sometimes very large. The challenge with that is then the good news is those companies then sign 10 or 20-year leases. So we have to go and work on the next whale. So I think for us, the numbers are very good. We don't break it down by industry. I mean, we do here, but not from a goal perspective because, again, it's hard to understand when some of these transactions might close and everything else. One of the things that we want to continue to do is to continue to increase the depth and breadth of our outreach to companies so that there's less and less likelihood that we miss anything. As Councilmember Balcom pointed out or asked, there is no simple database, right? There's literally nowhere to go to find these companies. It really is through 15 different sources, whether it's everyone in the council letting us know there's a business or real estate brokers or ourselves and our networks and events and all of those sorts of things. So a couple of things that we're continuing to do. Not only do we continue to expand the number of businesses we engage with routinely through marketing, media, and other things like that. One of the programs we're implementing this year is actually to implement some marketing campaigns through our Salesforce system. So we have a new module that we're going to implement there by the end of this calendar year. We've got someone that, knock on wood, is scheduled to start in November. We've done the pre-work necessary to set that up, so it's our hope that we can continue to go deeper and deeper into the business community and build longer and relations. Most of the time we're working on projects that have a 12 to 18 month timeline now. We'd like to expand that out closer to 3 years over the next 12 to 18 months, so that's our objective. One of the things I was going to get back to that Councilmember Fanny-Gonzalez and Councilmember Balcom mentioned was the underrepresented businesses here in the county. That's a challenge. We try and do everything. Our website's available in 6 or 7 languages. We try and publish things in as many languages as we can. And as you mentioned, both the MCBC Business Center and MCDC both have someone dedicated to working with underrepresented businesses and being out there in the community. So Nadia Clute with MCBC and Narbelli Galindo with our team. So those are important. I know, Councilmember Friedson, does that answer all of your questions?
It does. I will strongly encourage you. You should be keeping track of the number of expanded and retained businesses by specific industry.
I do.
We do.
Okay, because you mentioned that you weren't keeping them by specific industry, and
Our goal is not by
plan
industry.
specifically speaks to doing it by specific industry, and there's a reason for that, right? The chart that we have before us is overwhelmingly life sciences. That's a good thing. That's one of our most important strategic areas, and we should be, doubling and tripling down on our global strength in life sciences and biohealth, and I've tried to facilitate some of that from the legislative standpoint. But to your point, if next year some of those large life science biohealth companies, for whatever reason, are not able to move forward, we have to be diversified, both from an economic standpoint and just from a pipeline standpoint, because there could be something that impacts global biohealth for several years and makes that industry difficult to expand for whatever reason out of your control. And if we don't have any other industry that we are equally as focused on, then we're going to be a challenge. We can't focus on everything, but we do have strategic industries that we have set out. So I want to point that out. I'll switch gears a little bit, although I do think additional work needs to be done on metrics. Like, I would think when you present things like this that you have the metrics. Like, this is a good story. It sounds like you have exceeded your goals, but the goal and the exceeding or coming short of your goal should always be, to me, part of that conversation. So I just want to reiterate that. I've talked a lot about metrics related to this plan, and hope that you'll continue to think through ways to have specific, measurable outcomes here. And then I just wanted to follow up on something that the chair said, which I really appreciated about the leases. This seems to be data that's available. Like, there's certain things that are not available. The timing of a lease is generally available. Everybody in the industry knows when certain people are coming off of leases. Do we not know that information?
That's actually not a generally available piece of information. It's if that were the case, then other real estate brokers would be going around trying to poach businesses from a building into their building. I mean,
which they do all the time. We hear about that all the time.
So there is information. We can do our best estimate of when leases will be expiring, but there is not any one source. But I mean, that's private information. Some companies sign 3-year leases. Some companies sign 15-year leases. So we can find out when a lease began, when somebody moved into their space, and estimate that their lease will last for 5 years, so that we know when we're going to be coming up against the lease expiration date. But we've even, I've contacted brokers and said, hey, can you tell me if this company, does their lease expire December 23 or is it December 2025? I can't share that information. Those are the answers that we get. So it is a very difficult thing to have an exact understanding of when those leases are expiring.
And so the most common publicly available data comes from CoStar. CoStar tracks properties, buildings, and leases, but out of that, out of all the leases in CoStar, only 20% have an expiration date. So for those 20%, we contact 100% of those people. For the other 80%, it's not available. The only other similar source of information is a product called Gazelle, which uses different information. We've used that in the past. You still end up with about the same 20-25% of businesses you actually have legitimate information on.
And of the 20-25%, are those a random assortment
Completely
of projects,
random.
or the larger ones, or the smaller ones, or
Completely random.
Okay, because we hear all the time from businesses, I will tell you, and I think I can speak for colleagues, because I think I've been together with other colleagues when we've heard this, that other jurisdictions are reaching out well before leases are renewed, trying to recruit our businesses to go elsewhere, and it seems sometimes that we are caught off guard. And I'll just, one example of that would be Clark and Bethesda. Everybody seemed to know in the private sector of when their lease was up and what was under consideration, except for us.
That's not necessarily true. You have to look. I'm glad you brought up Clark. It wasn't just a question of when the lease was expiring at Bethesda Metro Center. It was also a question of when the owner of the company died, and that they were waiting until after that because he wanted to maintain a presence in Montgomery County. That's where they were founded. If you look at the leadership of that group, they were waiting for multiple years, and they debated back and forth about whether they would stay or move into Northern Virginia, which is what they did for that piece of the business. That I will also say that was a 4 or 5 year time horizon, so they're not just, to your point, 12 or 18 months. It could be 4 to 5 years out. That explains why we talk about our group of 125 or other industries, such that even if we don't know the lease expiration date, we should know the company well enough, and that's our intention, that they're going to tell us what's happening, even if it's not in a database, so that we're not caught by surprise.
Appreciate that. And just about the database of businesses, this has been an ongoing challenge and concern, and I would just strongly encourage some thought to how we solve that problem. And if it requires a significant amount of resource and a long-term investment to do that, I really think we need to pursue that, because this was one of the biggest takeaways from the pandemic, from the Economic Development Strategic Plan.
And great, just want to remind folks that with a Black Collaborative, they are doing exactly that, but just with Black businesses, creating a list of businesses. I'm not sure when they're going to come back with their final, or at least more potential list, but stay tuned. As soon as we have that in the agenda, we'll let you know. We really need to speed it up because we have a second session after this. Councilmember Stewart will have the last question on this particular panel.
Great. I think thank you for letting me join the committee today, and thank you for this presentation. I'll go quickly. So I think the challenges are clear from what we said, and I'm glad we have colleagues here across different committees. We have our housing, the work that is being done. I think each of us know that a lot of work is being done on our permitting process, and there's still more work to be done, but we hear more and more about the great things happening there. Our available talent pool, I guess I'll dub this the vibe, though I will say there are many areas in Montgomery County that can compete with a good vibe in the DC region. The one thing I wanted to focus on, and I think this kind of goes to Councilmember Friedson's point about the metrics, is what are you all seeing as the themes or the places where we are succeeding? Because as you said, people are choosing Montgomery County, they're staying here. Why?
There are multiple good reasons. And you put them all together, in spite of what the headlines may show, having a great school system is absolutely critical. It has been our success. It will continue to be our success. And we want to focus on what makes it successful, even though the headlines might focus on other things. That investment that this county has made over time is critical to our long-term success, number one. Number two, the diversity of Montgomery County, not just in terms of demographics, but in terms of the geographic space. That we have more livable communities than most other jurisdictions, not just green communities, but the trade-off between urban environments, suburban environments, mixed-use environments, still very strong, and that continues. Having a strong workforce that is already here, even though there's a shortage of talent, people like to be where there are other people like themselves from an educational point of view. And we are still a leader in the region, so that to the degree that we continue to attract people with the right degrees and educational backgrounds, which we have done, is also important. You keep putting all of these things together. And we talked earlier, well, that's really about the education system, young families. There is more and more to do here. While we may not be Adams Morgan or other places, this county has a lot to offer from a cultural point of view, whether it's Black Rock, whether it's Strathmore, and we just keep seeing that when you put it together, it's a cliche, but it is a great place to live, work, and play. And so we focus on that quite a bit.
Thank you. I just think I wanted to pull out those themes because we talked about the challenges, but we also know that we have great things to offer here in Montgomery County. So thank you for that. I yield back.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the briefing, and we're gonna start the second part of the session. I'm gonna ask Dr. Ben Kraft from the Planning Department to please move forward. Bill Tompkins, I think you're gonna stay, right? And David, yes. Thank you for being here. And while they're getting settled, if Ms. Marlene Malkeson can please kick us off.
Yes, as they're loading the next set of slides, I just wanted to mention on the last issue that for a database of businesses, that was part of the request from the Business Center as part of the FY24 budget. It did not end up getting funded. But they recognize the need for that. I'm sure they'll be asking for it again, so just so that you know. So the next item that we're about to introduce is going to be the quarterly briefing that the committee receives from a combination of planning staff and economic development team staff on the state of economic indicators in the county. There's a new one for this report on migration, but I'll turn it over to them to lead the presentation.
Good morning. Bill Tompkins, President of Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. Pleased to be here with my colleagues. This is a great example of joint collaboration with MCEDC and Montgomery Planning. And I'm going to turn it over to the experts who understand these numbers better than I do. We're going to start with Ben Kraft.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, it actually has been a very good and long-running collaboration, so I hadn't thought about that. So we brought it up here. So if you could forward to the next slide, I can start, just dive right into the numbers. Oh, is this, we have a presentation. That's the actual report. We have a Yeah, it's in a slide deck.
Yeah,
If you do you have access to it, or I'll look for it.
I do. I thought I sent it this.
Yeah, it might have all come in the same.
No, there's another.
Okay. Well, why don't you start
Yeah.
speaking
So-
as we look for it?
And here we are, but yeah.
Okay.
What the first slide will show beyond the cover is the I guess fourth slide by now, when we're just diving right into the employment and labor force in this. So we've been doing this for a few quarters by now, and this story is largely the same, the labor force and employment story, which is that while we have been showing consistent growth in both labor force and employment since the pandemic, we still remain under the pre-pandemic levels. And so in this case, we're still about 17,500 people in the labor force below where we were to start the pandemic. And this is, so we have historically low, and this quarter actually was our basically historic low unemployment rate at 1.5%, which again is good and great for workers. But it also is partly driven, or in a very significant way driven by this very slow return to the labor market. There was a report that just came out from the Stephen Fuller Institute out of George Mason that tracks the regional economy, and they, basically came to the same conclusion. They compared what they call the Maryland suburbs, which they basically mean Montgomery and Prince George's County, to Northern Virginia. They're I think over 5%. Their labor force has returned to 5% greater than what it was prior to the pandemic. We're still a few percentage points below. So that's really been the main employment story, even though we do continue to inch up there. So we can move on. And this is also, you can kind of see this in this chart where we're just are tracking the highest growth in occupations ranked by just absolute, net change in that occupation, where we do have encouragingly some high increases in our higher wage knowledge, like core knowledge occupations such as software developers and project managers, operations managers. While we do have positive net gains in things like personal care aides, servers, preschool teachers, those are still, relative to the size of those industries, which are very large, those gains are still not really keeping up with probably where they should be. And if you move to the next slide, this is where you can see, this is looking at industries. This is where you see the positive growth in our scientific R&D, our life science, which is a really strong positive data point there. But overall, we're still 1% below where we were, and that is in a large part because of the retail, leisure, and hospitality and healthcare, the continued not being, not reaching up to where we were prior to the pandemic. And in the case of leisure and hospitality, pretty significantly below where we were. And we can continue on, going to real estate and development. So if I know office real estate is a big question, obviously, these days, and we had a panel here, I think last month about that, and if you would just look at this chart where office is kind of in a bubble, you would just say, well, it's actually kind of stabilizing along. Its rents actually went up a bit year over year. Its vacancy went down just a bit. It's roughly the same. And its availability and vacancy are slightly different. Just depends on whether something's up for lease or could have not been built yet. So availability is up a little bit, but really it kind of looks like office is humming along at a very high base vacancy rate, which I think is kind of consistent with what we've seen since the pandemic. It's just there does appear to be a lot of office space that probably will not be office space in the future. But this is a very high level picture. If you disaggregate this, you'll see there's a lot of spikiness based on geographic subsector and building type subsector. So very high-end trophy office buildings have been doing okay. and same with life science. So that's, and then on the other hand, what things that are not those are probably dragging the averages down a bit. Retail is fairly strong. Retail space is strong. Probably what's driving, the rents are, and I'll say strong in that the real estate part of it is strong. The labor part is not, and that's probably we could see even more retail growth, both real estate and industrial if we had the labor force. But the rents are going up a bit, and vacancies going down a bit. And then finally, when we get to multifamily on the next slide, it's again its vacancy is at a nice kind of reasonable level there, staying within a percentage point of where it had been year over year. Rents are up a little bit. I think it's about a 2 percentage point increase in rents. And then just the last thing I'll say, I'm noticing we don't have industrial, but relative to the conversation that was going on before, I actually don't know off the top of my head what industrial rents are, but they're less than all of these other ones. So we were talking about that industrial space problem that we have. Well, if you're a landlord, you're going to see all these other opportunities where you'll be getting, much more income, revenue per square foot of whatever building you have. So every high cost, high land cost jurisdiction has trouble maintaining industrial for that reason. So I'll turn it over to Dave.
Okay. David Barry, I'm a research consultant working part-time with Bill. And we will move on to home sales, where the median price increased, median home sales prices increased 5% year over year. That was from $600,000 to $630,000. And part of that, and this you would expect with higher interest rate environment, the number of active listings is down by a third, and closings are down by nearly a quarter compared to last year. And, who knows what this will be next year, but, interest rates will probably be about the same next year. Moving on to venture capital investments, the second quarter showed a very robust amount of $333 million. A lot of that went to one company, but the zero interest rate environment in the pandemic years made for some extraordinary venture capital years because money was free, and that's since normalized some. So I would expect the future to go back to a more historic pattern. But 6 in 10, as I mentioned, of the second quarter venture capital dollars went to Aladad in Bethesda, which it gets a lot of investment because they're the developer of an integrated healthcare management app, healthcare information. And so identically then on the next slide, the healthcare enterprise systems, all of that was Aladad. So that was the largest sector, the largest company in the second quarter. Okay. Now to our special section. We discussed some of this earlier, but we looked at the county level migrations in and out of the county. The source of this is actually the IRS, and they base it on returns from 2 different tax years. In this case, it is from 2020 to 2021. It is the most current available. Again, they have to look at 2 years. So it may have been a little bit affected by Montgomery County, by 2020, but I don't suspect that the overall patterns will be any different or much different when the next release comes out, because these are, I think, longer term trends. The county had 33,000 tax-paying household out migrants and 27,000 in-migrants. So that's actually a loss of 6,000 tax filers, households. That kind of tracks with the county has been dropping population a little bit in the last couple of American Community surveys. Of those who left, 62% left the state of Maryland, although a good bit of that would be to the district and Virginia. A lot of movement is regional, not all of it, of course, but onto the next slide. Going over the the top line is that people are more likely to go next door, and you can see it on the next slide. The most outflow was actually to Prince George's, followed by Frederick and the District of Columbia. I think the demographics of those Prince George's compared to Frederick and DC are going to be different. Prince George's lower. The most inflow on the next slide. Oh, sorry. Anyway, the most inflow came from Prince George's and DC. DC has a lot of movement from Montgomery into it. It also has a lot of movement from there into Montgomery. I'm sure that's gone on for years because, we're mentioning, younger people, schools, whatever. But what happened is that Frederick had outflow of 3,190, but the inflow was only 938. And so that's easily the largest net loss of the jurisdictions. And the reasons, the same as everywhere. People seeking more housing at better value prices. The county actually showed net losses to D.C., but also Howard and Anne Arundel in Maryland, and several jurisdictions in Virginia. Not large amounts, but definitely losses. And then one of the larger ones actually was Sussex County, Delaware. That's the beach, so that's getting retirees who are moving to the beach. So, and I think that's it.
Thank you. Do you have something else or no?
No.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to open it to the committee. I'm going to start with Council President Evan Glass.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation, the one preceding this as well. A lot of data to crunch, and so I appreciate you breaking it down and making it digestible for us all. I want to start with the employment numbers that I think Mr. Kraft, Dr. Kraft, you are due the title, Dr. Kraft, that you shared, in that there is a 17,000 employment person differential. Yeah. And so I think we've also discussed during this session the fact that we have a near record low unemployment rate. So can you break that riddle for us of the 17,000 job differential and a record level unemployment?
They're directly related to each other, and it's that. So the 17,000, that's the labor force. That just means that we have 17,000 fewer people willing and able to work than we had prior to the pandemic. So I think right there, that is, the potential jobs are just pulling from a much smaller set of people than they previously had been. And again, it's hard to tell exactly what this decline is coming from, but a lot of it, these are residents of Montgomery County. A lot of it obviously is retirements. A lot of it, as we just saw, it could be out migration. I mean, we had we had migration going in all different directions, but we lost 6,000 people, outside of the county. So it seems like a lot of those 6,000 would be, there's always going to be an out-migration of retirees to, for warmer places, but it seems like potentially this year we had a larger than normal out-migration of working people. So we just have fewer people to fill the jobs that are available. And this is not, it's more extreme here, but again, this is kind of, happening just about everywhere too.
Ben, do you want to talk about the labor force participation rate and how that also impacts that number?
Oh, do you mean that we have lower?
Yeah, there are a lot of people not only who are retiring, but who are choosing not to work.
Oh, sorry.
Or if you look at where we looked at the specific industries, take hospitality in particular, a lot of people who lost jobs or quit, whether they were in restaurants or hotels, they just didn't come back. They went to other jobs, other jurisdictions. So I think I don't want to infer where you were heading. It's always good to have a low unemployment number, but it doesn't always mean that that's good news. What it means is that anybody in general who wants to get a job should be able to get one, but it also means that the labor force is not as big as it needs to be to support our economy.
Well, I'll get to your assumption in a moment, but I appreciate that response. Also, when we were one of the slides was referring to the vacancy rate and availability rate. The last time this committee met, we discussed utilization rate, and so can you explain where utilization rate fits into that data?
It's somewhere in there, but we can't tell exactly because it's not a recorded or disseminated data source. So it's that's just you have to rely on basically the landlord telling you this is how much of the building is actually being used. So you could have 100% of a building leased out, but you may have for one of the companies that is leasing that may have 2 floors, they're only using 1. Mm-hmm. So that's where they're utilizing half of their space. So there's a good chance that when if you would do something like a utilization rate, it would be higher than that. Or actually, it would be lower because it's it's what's being utilized, but it would be more severe and show maybe like a bigger problem than just what the vacancy rate is showing. And availability rate is it's different than the vacancy rate because it takes into account, it could be buildings that actually aren't built yet but are leasing up prior to being built. It could be buildings that for whatever reason are not being available or put out onto the market as available for a lease, even though they're vacant. So yeah, it's in there, and it's just that kind of hidden part that we can't exactly see. Which was why it was very helpful to have that panel where they brought that up and noted that they even with low vacancy or reasonable vacancy, they might have very low utilization.
That's right, and the low utilization means less people walking the streets who are shopping and eating and all of those things, which is why that hidden factoid or data point is really important. And then the last question I want to ask is, or point I want to make is about the migration flow, right? And to the point that Mr. Tompkins was raising about, where am I going? All of these data points on their own can be headlined as either extremely good or extremely bad, which is why we need to have this conversation and put it all into context. And the context with that migration flow is that nationwide, people are moving to the Sun Belt, and they are moving away from places like California and New York and Massachusetts and New Jersey and Maryland. And so this is not unique to Montgomery County. It is not unique to our state, but it is something that we need to figure out. And that's why we're having these conversations. But we are not alone in this. This is a national trend, and especially as telework continues. And climate change persists. All of these are part of the mix as to why people move to different places. But I appreciate this update, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. I would like to highlight, to express that after the office market session that we had a few weeks ago, which I thought was awesome, I've been working with staff to put together recommendations based on that discussion. The draft is going to come to the committee. I think I'm going to release it this week, so you're going to get it. And the idea is to share it with stakeholders across the county, and we'll have a session on it. Fall is packed, so most likely January, but the point will be it must be ahead of the next budget. And it has to be a frank conversation on the office market. We have touched it today as well. We need to be aggressive and strategic in making sure that, Montgomery County is seen as what it is. It's a wonderful place to do business and for people to stay here. Yes, we have challenges and we're talking about them here. And what do you do when you love somebody? You tell them about the issues that you have with them and move on so we can all improve. That's how I'm seeing this. So stay tuned. Again, you'll have it probably at the end of this week. With that, I'm going to pass the mic to Councilmember Balkin.
Thank you. I want to focus on two things. The out-migration, I think, is a critical issue for the workforce, but it also has tax revenue implications. So do you track the incomes of these tax returns?
Well, do you want
I believe that there is income data available, and I have to look at that to see what's there. But I believe so, and that's why I said that I think the outflow to Prince George's, the incomes would be a lot lower than like into DC,
right?
Where
so,
they would be higher.
Yeah, and I think, and also for the seniors who are heading out, right? So those people who have choice are often people with higher incomes. So I think I would like to get that data from the income data on the returns.
We can compile what's available from that.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. And then, of course, Council President mentioned it, the telework, and people aren't tied to this job. Even if they have the commute once or twice a week, it's not 5 days a week. So I think that's something that we need to think about. Again, from a workforce issue, primarily, tax revenue issue, but then also what is this doing to our town centers? And we had that discussion when we talked about office vacancies, about what is it doing to our restaurant retail businesses. So just wanted to highlight that. And then the second point, on Circle 6 of the packet, the venture capital. So if we look at the dollar amount has rebounded to pre-pandemic, but the number of deals hasn't. So not sure if who can talk about that in terms of the number of deals.
Yeah, you're getting fewer but larger deals, essentially.
Well, I got that part.
As far as
It's not a significant change. It is a drop, but you're also seeing that in every region. There are fewer deals across the country, whether you're in Silicon Valley or here. I think we had 20 for the second quarter, 34 prior to that. But if you go back to 2016, there were 20, and then there were 32. So the trend that you're seeing is consistent with what's happening across the country.
Okay.
There's nothing. The only thing you do want to watch is if you're seeing the amount of venture capital invested going up significantly, and we only have one deal, as we did this past quarter.
Right, and so if we didn't have a super big deal, then the revenue, the dollar number would be significantly lower. So
Yes.
I think that we need to focus on, if it's nationwide, if it's a issue, then we still have to pay attention to it. But if the number of deals in the county in Maryland are different, I think that we need to pay attention to that.
Absolutely. We don't track this every quarter like we do here, but we look at what venture capital trends in general. And for instance, we'll look at what's happening across the river. We don't do it every quarter unless we see a trend. But to your point, if we feel that there's a lot of venture capital out there, but we only have a few deals, then that means something is missing. And it does vary by industry.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Do you have a question? Councilmember Sales.
Just piggybacking off of the questions regarding our housing shifts. I know that the packet mentioned we're getting a fair amount of residents moving to Montgomery County from the District of Columbia. Do we know how many people who are moving into the county are buying versus renting?
Not from the IRS data, no.
Okay.
We don't.
I don't know if there's a source that would link migration to housing, renting versus owning. I'm not sure that's. I
Think so.
I don't know if that's possible.
Well, are we checking the home buying versus renting as we're looking at numbers? Whether we're looking at recordation taxes or?
Well, we haven't been tracking recordation. We could do that. You're talking about just new. We have
new home purchases.
So we have new home purchases. I believe was there. I don't know about specific residential leases. I don't know if we're not tracking that. I don't know if there's a way to actually. We just track the overall the changes in the rents and the vacancy rates. But there's a lot more of that happening just transaction by transaction than there would be with home buying. I believe if it's not in the slides, it's at least in the report that we track the number of home sales, and we know that's been low, and just because of just lack of supply, lack of inventory on the market. But yeah, as to know whether it's the people buying are existing county residents or in migrants from other places, I'm not sure that's something that can be teased out from the data. It's a good question, though.
We as a county track not only home sales, but also total number of people who are renting, but we don't correlate it with this particular data. So we are very good at understanding the trends in terms of the number of households that are in single-family homes, multifamily, whether they are owning or renting. But to correlate it back to this, there's no easy way to do that.
Okay. All right. Maybe year over year, if we can see. I know that we know that home buying is down overall because of the prices, but it would be good to see what the trends are, especially since we just passed the rent stabilization legislation, how that's being impacted by our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions from this side of the table. I thank you so much for this information, and I look forward to continue working with you all in partnership. That goes to both the Planning Department and the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. I would like to quickly announce the rest of the fall session, because many of the points that we're going to be discussing in the future dealt with issues that we discussed today. October 23rd, we're going to be discussing the retail market. And then that same day, we have the work session number 2 for the urban districts, including the pilots in District 2, 5, and 7. Those districts, because the rest of the districts already have urban districts. And we're also going to be discussing OLO's 2023 evaluation of the Bethesda Urban Partnership. Then on November 6th, talking about diversification, we're going to be talking about the agrotourism. And we're going to be at County at the Agricultural History Farm Park in Deerwood, District 7. And then November 16 is going to be a discussion on the sports industry. I'm very excited about that one. And then December 4th is the restaurant sector in terms of permitting only. And that's the day DPS is going to be discussing, giving an overview of what they have been up to in the last few months on the challenges that they have faced and how they are doing solving those issues that we all know about. With that, thank you so much for being here, and we are adjourned.